Patrick Nwakogo to please come forward and speak to us on talent management issues and perspective. We will take after him one more presentation from Walen, and then we will go break up for tea and come back. When we come back, we will be having an extended discussion on what we would have heard. Thank you, Patrick.
Good morning once again, everyone. I'm not sure I have the stamina of Kunle, but if you're patient enough with me, I'm sure you have a lot to take away in addition to what he has offered this morning. I have the privilege to represent in Nigeria a company that is represented in about 85 countries in the world with 200 offices across the globe. And what that means is that right from Argentina to Brazil, from Iraq to Egypt, from Nigeria to New York, I bring to you this morning the benefit of experience. We're working with both Fortune 500 corporations. At least we work with 400 of the Fortune 500. That includes Microsoft, Walmart, GE, FedEx, and the rest of them. We also have a benefit of working with medium-sized organizations. And thank you for pointing out that we need to start to equalize things in terms of having a standard to say, because some companies that are in Nigeria that qualify as blue chips, outside of Nigeria, they really become not medium-sized, but small-sized organizations. Nigeria recently is being voted to be the business economy in the world. That comes to just a little over $500 billion. That is the size of what the US economy loses as a result of employee disengagement. So what they lose is much more than what we are creating. That tells you how small we are. So we are not even there yet. So if I equalize that and take it to the global scheme of things, I will always say that there is no big firm in Nigeria. Because to qualify as a Fortune 500, you and I will know what it means. We started this discussion. Mr. Labi almost took the word out of me. My major concentration this morning is going to be on employee engagement. And the lady from Organisational.com, well, I have spoken the mind of a lot of small firms represented here today. Before I move further to give the synopsis of my presentation, I wanted to say that what Kunle has said, going forward, I will recommend a book for every one of us called Tribes. Tribes is a small book you can read in 2 days. If you're a fast reader in 1 day, by a popular author called Seth Godin. He talks about how you and I, regardless of where we are in our organization, can begin to make a change. And the other book I will recommend is How Will You Measure Your Life? Written by a Harvard professor who found that most people come to Harvard full of hopes. But 10 years down the line, those hopes are dashed. And they begin to find out that the things that matter in life is not how much money I have made, but rather what contributions I have made where I am. And I challenge every one of us this morning, regardless of where you are. You may not have the benefit of working in a blue chip like Nigerian Breweries or Share, or having the privilege of working in an organization that is global, but change and impact, it's not about the society, it's about who I deal with. In that book, How You Measure Your Life, one of the major things you will take away from that book is the fact that managers, which takes me back to employee engagement, that managers have the greatest impact to make change in society. Not many of us will ever meet Lord Jonathan, whether as a sitting president or as an ex-president. So the managers, however, when you take away the fact that most people spend about 2/3 of their waking life at work or doing work-related activities, you will find the impact that you and I have as managers on the lives of other people. And that's what employee engagement is saying. When we see the factors that drive employee engagement, you will see that it's not about the organization, it's about you and I, who are managers. Because we found that people join organizations, but they leave managers. talking about managers who are abusive. So I come to a shell, I come to an MBO because in quote, they are big brands and they are good brands to work for. But I encounter a manager that frustrates me and yells at me. In no time, it's no more about the organization, it's about him. Because the organization I know is not my CEO who I barely say, it's about him that supervises my work. And to those that report to me too, the organization is me who can make a difference in how I run my show as it were. So as we talk about this today, employee engagement, we need to see what employee engagement is and what we need to do, both as big organizations and those of us who are from small organizations, what we can begin to do to begin to retain talent. But before we come to employee engagement, here is an opening quote that I have. A recent survey by McKinsey & Co. They interviewed some leading CEOs across the globe and some business leaders. And many of them said that half of the time they are worrying that talent management practices in their organizations are not meeting their business outcomes. Half again said that they believe that there is insufficient commitment on the part of managers, that's you and I, to really develop talent in our system. So while we may blame the CEO and society for lack of talent, the question is what are you and I doing to grow talent in our organization? How did we get to where we are today in terms of shortage of talent in the system? Starting from the 1950s, where corporate America really took off as we know it today, you find a situation where talent management was about getting the right people with the right skills into the right jobs. They drove that system and it worked so well. Companies like GE, Microsoft, they even have their universities like you have, Motorola University. Big elaborate place. If you go to St. Charles in the US, Accenture has an elaborate university where they develop talent. What about GE? They have the Leadership Institute, now named after that West, where they develop their own talent as well. It worked so well right until 1981 when the world encountered the very first major recession after the Great Recession of the 1920s. What the system found was a situation where the entire system had a glut of talent. And at that point, the major issue was not anymore about retaining, it was about getting rid of the excess salary, because salaries represent for most organizations, except you are an asset-based organization like Nigerian Railways, most other institutions like banks, most of the costs will go to staff salaries, and by and large, many other organizations. So, as of 1981, the major challenge that most organizations faced became about how to let go of the excess talent that they had in the system. So for the first time since the history of corporate organizations started laying off talent that they spent billions of dollars to develop. And now the question arose, so what do we do with the elaborate talent management system that we have evolved, succession planning, high potential employee schemes and all whatnot that we have developed in the system? That wasn't the question anymore. The question became, how do we get rid of this excess talent that was costing us a lot of money? And they said that was the first time we knew what layoffs were. Until Clinton came and America had the greatest expansion in the recent history of mankind. In the 1990s, the world encountered the level of economic expansion that we never saw since the Great Depression. And what now happened for the first time, corporate organizations resorted to outside hiring because they didn't have enough time to develop talent in-house. So they resorted to outside hiring. So the question now was, why spend 2-3 years, like MBA we do anyway, to develop talent and spend about $4 million for one person? So if I wanted probably about 100 people, on the average I'm spending about, how much? 400 million. How much will it cost me to pay a consultant to recruit talent for me? So everybody resorted to outside hiring. But you know what? As one organization was hiring from outside, other people were also poaching their own talent. So it was not nobody was benefiting from this. And that was where the world found themselves like, okay, so what's the way forward? Now we are poaching people from outside, which is good enough, so they have their skills, they bring it on board, and then we don't have that learning curve of saying, let's wait for 2 years to see talent begin to turn into profits. Let's hire from outside. So we're doing that. As we're poaching from other people, they too were poaching from us. You know the interesting thing, if you walk down to a bank like Zen Bank, for example, I'm just using Zen as an example, you'll find that the same talent they have poached from, say, an access bank, someone leaves an access for the same position to go and fill a similar position in the UBA. So we have a situation where costs are rising, quality of talent hasn't really risen. Because the same people who left us have gone to other organizations without any value addition anyway. It was the same content that they had that they took from us, they went to other organizations. So today also lost other people. So where are we today? Well, companies are realizing that it's the decision now is no more about whether to buy or to make. It's going to be a combination to make and to buy. And thank God the companies like MBLC realize the fact, especially for what you do, that we don't have a lot of talent out there really, because we're not a bank. We have about 25 banks in the country. So yes, to some extent, a bank can rely on outside coaching. Not for companies that are technically invested, like airline business. You can't really easily get talent from outside. So we now have a situation where we've got to make and to buy. But the truth is, I think it's still cheaper to buy from outside. And so why you find a situation where organizations, I'm bringing you now the benefit of what global 500 organizations, what they are doing right now. They now buy intentionally less than what they project they will need, and then they make up the shortfall from outside hiring. Why outside hiring might be expensive, they realize that it pays into insignificance when you have invested so much in a talent that you sell, and it works out the door the very next day. So they keep a smaller pool. So now talent management is no more about the outdated succession planning that we have, where you say someone comes in today and you're planning well into 10-15 years for someone you're not sure, the millennial children, you're not sure is going to be here next month. So what am I saying? Succession planning as we know it no longer works. So what Fortune 500 corporations are beginning to do is to develop what we call pools of talent. So you recruit people right from graduate schools, build the kind of organizational competencies that you want to see, such that whether the person is working in GE Finance, GE Medical, GE Airline, whatever it is, they have the same basic competencies that will make them work across different divisions. So why not saying, let this guy specialize, say, in finance alone, so he has a bit of everything that a company does, such that when there's a need for him to move over from one side of the business to the other, he has the competencies required. That's the way that Fortune 500 corporations are going. The other thing that they are doing is to say, well, we still need to attract and develop our talent. What can we begin to do to speed up their growth? If it used to take about 4 to 5 years to develop talent to the level where they begin to give us the kind of performance that we want, can we fast track that process that it can happen in 6 months? It can happen in 1 year, at max 18 months, knowing that beyond 2-3 years we really can't say what will happen. And another reason why succession planning doesn't work anymore, and I will tell you, we live in an economy where CEOs, I don't know about Nigeria, maybe not so very vast now, but abroad in the US, CEOs are fired every now and then. And every time a new CEO comes, what does he do? He changes strategy. It means that every succession plan that has been built upon the previous strategy becomes null and void. He also decides, okay, I know talents that I would need to execute because they have the mandate of the shareholders to deliver on certain figures. So he cares less about what plans you have in the system. What he cares about shareholder value, which is what drives the American economy anyway. And before you know it, we're going to have that situation here. Recently, the MD of the bank, this Sky Bank, retired. Yeah, unceremoniously, this was someone that had in his mandate about 10 years. In less than 4 years, he's saying, I'm quitting. You can bet that a new man is going to come in, evolve a different strategy, and a different succession plan takes up over again. What do you do as a CEO if I have a succession plan and I know and I see on the table that Mr. X is going to assume the GM of, say, this division, and based on the plan that I have to execute, this guy I can see doesn't have the competency. What happens? I get in someone who is going to help me execute that strategy. Now, what is the fate of the man who has spent his years believing that this is where I'm heading up? So while we may deceive ourselves and think that even the big companies, there's a succession planning in place, I can tell you from the benefit of working with the global firms that succession planning really doesn't even work anymore the way we know it. We have to start to think of a better way to deal with things as they happen. Look at what happened in the banks in 2009. One man came up, sacked about 10 leading CEOs in the countries. New people came in. Strategies changed. People were laid off. A new strategy came into place. What happened to the elaborate monies and strategies that they put in place building succession plan prior to that time? So the point I'm saying is the way to go forward in talent management, one, I have said, people are beginning to develop a small pool of talent and buy the rest that they need. The next thing they are doing is develop a talent base that have broad competencies across the different divisions in the company so that people can move from one location to the other. The other thing is to speed up the amount of time that usually will take for anybody to begin to add value from the time it is repeated into the system. The next thing which global firms are doing, which we want to take away for as many of us that are HR leaders here, is begin to balance the need of the organization and the needs of the employees. Companies abroad are beginning to have what we call, I'm sure most of us are conversant with the internal job markets. So they are saying that rather than lose an employee to another organization, what can we begin to do to retain them? The first question you and I will have to ask ourselves is, why do people leave one organization to the other? The basic fundamental reason is that they are seeking better opportunities elsewhere. The question is, why don't you and I let them seek those opportunities inside of our organization? So if I am in credit and I'm saying I need to move to business development, why won't you let me? If I'm in sales and I'm saying I need to move to credit, why won't you let me? Knowing that if you do not let me move across functions, I'm going to seek this opportunity elsewhere. So one key way to build talent retention, which is the key issue right now in the workplace, is to develop your internal job market, make it a real market. I know a company, LNG, does that right now, where they advertise positions within the firm. It doesn't matter whether you are the head of oil and gas. Once there is a vacancy in any particular division, they advertise it internally. Once they source any good candidates for that position, they recruit. The reason being that LNG, for example, is a very flat structure organization. I have the benefit to say that my wife worked there for 8 years and she retired. She resigned rather. She's home. She worked for 8 years and she did one function for 8 years. So in spite of the huge salary, as you may know, like Kunle said, people are beginning to ask, beyond the money, is there no other meaning for life? And that's where the key comes for smaller firms to say, why am I not able to give you the kind of salaries that big firms are offering? What can I begin to do to add meaning to life? And that brings us finally to the concept of employee engagement. The concept of employee engagement. And employee engagement is saying, what do we do right now? Companies treat people as employees with valuable skills. Employees are saying, don't treat us as people with valuable skills. Begin to treat us as valuable people with skills. I'll tell you the difference. Okay. Don't treat me as someone with valuable skills. In other words, when my skills disappear, or you find no use for my value anymore, that's you show me the door. Rather, I need you to start to treat me as someone that is valuable who possesses a skill. There are two things. When you consider me as someone who is valuable, the orientation will change. You won't yell at me. You will recognize that I am a man who has dignity and talk to me like someone who is valuable. And that brings us to the concept of employee engagement. What is employee engagement? Employee engagement simply has to do with a level of emotional and intellectual investment that people have in the work. Yep. Okay, the next slide. Why do we need to begin to take the concept of employee engagement? The figures is very clear. The Gallup organization had done a global survey and found out that companies that have more of engaged employees have performed others by as much as 202%. While in Nigeria, even in Nigeria, when you consider what 202% means, that's a lot. In other words, if you have a bank that delivers about 100 billion in a year, the counterpart that has employees that are engaged can do 202% of that volume. If you bring in within the organization, that figure is also saying that employees who are engaged have performed their colleagues by as much as this figure that you see. The challenge for you and I in HR, which is where the HR business partnering comes in, is how do I begin to determine those that are engaged, those that are disengaged, and those that are partially engaged. And then when we get that, and I will tell us what we need to do. The next slide. If you have not started taking the concept of employee engagement in your firm seriously, employee engagement costs the UK government or the UK economy as much as about 42 billion US dollars, 43 billion US dollars. Pounds, sorry. In the US, it's costing the US economy about $550 billion. We don't have the figures yet for Nigeria. We have a mandate before the end of the year to do a survey that Bill Carnegie for Nigeria, to come up with a survey for Nigeria to know what the figures. But I reckon that it will be poorer than this. Anyway, given that we're not even doing anything yet in terms of trying to engage people at work. Next slide. So employee engagement, basically, it's about how to win the heart and soul of people. This is what the global surveys are saying. We did this survey across the world, and we found out that on the average in most organizations, for bigger firms, only about 29% of the people who work in there are fully engaged. These are the people that drive the performance science. The bottom 26% are the baggage you need to do away with. These people, it's not only that they take home your salaries, these are the people that will actively cause harm to the organization. They are the people that will badmouth the organization. They are the same people abroad. I don't know about here. From my experience, people have had to burn down factories. They are not outsiders. They are disengaged employees. But the challenge for you and I is not really so much about the 29% if you work for a big organization. The challenge for you is what do I do with the 45 who are hanging in the balance? The 26, as it were, they are almost like you are better off asking them to leave. You don't want to waste a lot of money anymore, almost like beating away a dead horse. Your best bet is let them go. But for the 45%, what are you going to do? All they need is a little tweaking, and you're moving them to the upper 29. Just imagine that if you move this 45 to 29, you're going to have almost about 71%. Consider the level of engagement you have in your organization today and doubling that figure from 29% to about 70 plus. That's magical. And for smaller firms, the good news, contrary to expectation, is that you have more people engaged in smaller firms. Why is that so? We've talked about some of the factors. Flexi working hours. I resume work today and you say to me, Oga, would you let me go and bury my grandmom? I say, okay, that's fine, so long as your work won't suffer. I sign up 5 days, go and come. You and I know that not many organizations are willing to do that. I can't come to work today because I have a sickly child who I need to take to the hospital. Okay, are you able to work from home? That's okay, we'll sign up. I have a Carnegie office in the UK that they report to work only on Mondays to come and talk about your reports. The rest work from home. But like you said, you don't give freedom to people who don't know how to manage freedom. It is suicidal, it is bad for business. That's where holding people accountable for their rewards and remuneration comes into place. No work, no pay. So it's not about saying, I give you flexible working time, I let you work from home and on paid when you come and pick up a check. No, it's not as simple as that. In the UK and in most other developed society,
societies, for every contribution that you make in the system, there's a tracking. And so we can link reward to performance, like you're trying to talk about reward-based pay. So while there might be a basic pay in terms of saying the fact that I have my name enshrined as part of a member or membership of this organization, there's a basic pay I need to have. But people basically, like you said, even in your small firm, people are beginning to, organizations, and I found that the smaller firms are very good at doing that, even abroad. Making people, creating what they call entrepreneurs out of, in fact we call it now entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs in the system. You could see for every X I contribute, you could see how much you can take home. So you have now what we call unit president, people who are basically working for themselves. So what you do as a small business is to create a platform for people to express themselves. How can we take that back to the big organization? While we may not be able to have the flexibility of small firms, but we need to realize that the demography of the people who are mainly disengaged, where we have engagement issue, falls between age 40 and 49. Who can tell me why that is so? The people who are mainly not engaged at work are people age 40 and 49. And interestingly, that's where a lot of us fall in. Does anybody have a clue why that is so? The reason is, at this stage, a lot of people are seeking self-actualization. A lot of people are seeking meaning in life. Why am I have left school looking for the highest bidder? And I said to fresh graduates, if money is the reason you work, better look for the highest bidder. There's no use going to work for a firm who won't pay you much if money is your concern. But mark my word, by the time you're hitting your mid-career crisis, it's not going to be anymore about how much I earn, how much contribution, how valued am I at work, what impact am I making in society, which was largely what Kunle spoke about here. So the challenge for us who manage talent begin to realize that the more we begin to have people who rank between age 40 and 49, we're going to have to start to ask the question, what can we begin to do to make them to feel that this project is theirs? You don't want to start to micromanage a man at 40 to 49. I don't know about you, I hit my mid-career crisis at 32, and that's when I left my banking job. For some people, it comes earlier, like it happened to me. For some other people, it takes age 40, 49. But we found out, statistically speaking, that this happens for most people once they hit that age bracket. But unfortunately and interestingly enough, these are supposedly the most productive people because that's where they have gained all the experience in life. The question now is, why do you want to lose them? If people age 40 to 49 have the wealth of experience, then the question is, do I want to lose them simply because I want to prove seniority? Simply because I want to show I'm the boss? Does it really matter who the boss is? If you walk into my office in New York, you could barely tell who the CEO is. I can tell you my office, we have to relocate the office to downtown New York, a place called Long Island, if you know the place, so that we could build an office like a warehouse. So we don't have the luxury of Wall Street where people live skyscrapers and you have what they call the C-suite where the big boys are in one corner upstairs. Everybody is on the same shop floor. So you could not tell who the CEO is because the offices are like what Nigerians we call face me and face kind of stuff. All the doors are open, so you couldn't tell who is the CEO here. And that's what employee engagement is, where it's not really about who takes the glory, it's about what is the impact of our activity on the bottom line. So as you go back today, you start to ask yourself, even on my little desk as a manager, how am I getting people disengaged by yelling at them? How am I getting people disengaged by shouting? How am I getting disengaged? And I can tell you that it takes little things to turn around this 45%. Please go to the next slide. Just a little thing that we can begin to do. How do we know those that are engaged? They are more productive, I'll talk about it. They make more money for you. They stay longer and they're committed to your cause. That's exactly what they are. Those that are not engaged, this is the partially disengaged, engaged people. How do you know? They don't see a link between what they do and bottom line. Have you entered a bank recently? I entered one recently and somebody at the customer service desk. Yes, good afternoon, ma. Yes, how may I help you? She was busy typing. She couldn't look up to see because for her, it's the job. She has failed to make the connection
that the job she does is about me, who is working in to put my money in the bank. So one of the earliest signs you see about people who are partially engaged is that they're not really bothered, they can't make the connection between their work and business outcome. It's about their task. And they wait to see, you begin to find them lack initiative until you come in to say, hey Patrick, come and do this, they never do anything. And then their business is when it's paid, they let me put up my check, and then it's Good Friday. And I say to people that even for those of us who are here, the moment you're one of those who wake up on Friday mornings and say, thank God it's Friday, I'm saying you probably belong here. You know you are engaged when you wake up on Monday and say, thank God it's Monday morning. That's how I feel. I'm the CEO of Carnegie in Nigeria, but I spend half of my time or more in the classroom. I like to train. That's what tickles my fancy. Until you have people who look forward to Mondays, you don't have engaged employees. And I can tell you, you know why? If you are engaged at work, it will be difficult to make a division between your work and your life. I had an interview, some newspapers interviewed us when we first came to Nigeria last quarter of last year. And they said to me, Patrick, what is your own concept of work-life balance? I said, well, I don't know what work-life balance is. What I know is that I enjoy my life and my work are intertwined. To the extent that whether you wake me up 1 a.m. like Victor for a mail, I will respond because I'm happy doing the work. Or you call me up at short notice to come and make a presentation at a BusinessDay forum, I'm more than glad to be here because this is my life, it's not my work. So the challenge for you, HR leaders, is how do we begin to turn work into enjoyable activities? And it starts with recruitment. I always say that engagement becomes difficult and impossible when you have attracted the wrong people into the right jobs. What do I mean by that? If you have an elaborate recruitment strategy and platform like assessment center, it is very unlikely that you will miss it in terms of attracting the right kind of people you need. When you find the round pegs in the round holes, believe you me, people won't be in a hurry to rush over. I'm not saying it is ideal for people to stay back at work till 10 in the night or midnight, but I'm saying that even when they do, they are still happy, psychologically fulfilled, working late. They are even better off working late and happy than people who close their phone on sad and disengaged. And that's the truth about it. Next slide. And then this is what you don't want in your system. People who will really sow seeds of discord in your system, they will damage your institution. And the most say, how often do you hear them? My wife had a colleague that every time she spoke to her, it was about something the managers are not doing correctly. Those are not the kind of people you want in your system. The challenge I throw down to everyone here in HR is, and I said to you that CEOs understand only one language. If you work closely with a CEO, it's about what is the impact on my P&L. Everything we do in HR is stories. The truth is, when I tell a CEO I need to embark on an employee engagement initiative, I need to do one plan or whatever, the question is, at the end of the day, how does it translate to greater performance? And unfortunately, HR professionals, I speak to a lot of them a lot on a lot of the engagement that I do. A lot, even till now in this country, I'm amazed that not many companies are able to calculate as simple as the return on investment on training interventions. So we spend $100 million in a year on training. We can't say to a CEO that this is how it has impacted on our P&L. Then you ask me as a CEO, how on earth do you want me, how can you justify me cutting out another $500 million necessary for training? When you haven't been able to make the connection between the budget we expended on training the last year and how it has helped our P&L. And that's the challenge for you. And it's amazing because I've interacted with a lot of HR leaders here, and I'm surprised that something as little as this that companies have put behind them, and they're able to calculate for every X amount of money you spend on training or any HR initiative, they're easily able to tie it to bottom line, and we're not able to do that. That's your challenge number one. Challenge number one I threw down at you today is, when you go back, if you haven't done this for your organization like MPL has done, every organization has got to measure and understand the level of employee engagement in the system. Which category is engaged, who is partially engaged, and who is disengaged.
For the engaged people, your challenge is, what can we begin to do? Unfortunately, we don't have all the time. I will just breeze through it. What can we begin to do to ensure that we don't lose this talented, productive 29%? That's if you're in a big firm. Number two, what can we begin to do if 45% are just hanging in there, needing a little attention to move up, to belong to the group of 29%? What can we begin to do to push them up the ladder? And then finally, for the 26% that are causing us the damage, taking our monies home and causing us more damage, we need to begin to ask ourselves, do we really need them here? If we don't, and I don't think you do, how can we get them out of the system? You as HR professionals, you owe your CEOs, your board, that obligation to come up with these figures, because you're better off with them than with them. The next one. Move on. Here. Really just control the 4 factors. Here are the 4 factors that drive employee engagement. And when you see this, you have to identify to know that somebody is engaged at work. He's very enthusiastic. I've said that before. He's inspired. They are confident that they can do the job that is required of them. They are inspired. Money is not the driving force. They love the job because the job is them. The job defines them. They find a meaning in what they do. And again, the organization has given them the empowerment, the resources that they require to do their jobs well. And then, yeah. Yes, thank you. Here is the big difference in employee engagement in small and the big companies. While I was responding to one of the issues, I've said that before, there are 3 factors that drive employee engagement across the world. Number 1 is the relationship with the immediate supervisor. Number 2 is pride in working for that organization. And number 3 is belief and trust in senior leadership. Of these 3 factors, the driver here is the relationship with the immediate supervisor. Why is that so? I've said before that people join organizations. Why would I join an MBL? I know MBL or Shell or UBA or Zenith, whichever bank it is. It's a big firm, it's a blue chip. I love the brand, I've heard so much, I come in. That's the reason I'm joining. But ask most people if they're honest with you when they are doing their exit interviews. I can tell you from our research that 80% will be exiting because of the relationship with immediate supervisors. They've been badly managed, they've been abused like Kunle said. And it just takes a reorientation. And like I said, people don't give what they don't have. How do people become leaders? I joined an organization where the first 2 years I joined, maybe I went for training once. So all I knew about leadership was about how my manager led me. So if you led me badly, the day I assume leadership, I start to lead people the way I've been led. And so you find people who are abusing people because they too were abused. And are still even being abused by their own senior leaders in the same institution. So they are giving what they are getting. And so to begin to address the issue of employment and employee engagement in big companies is going to start by a reorientation of the managers in the system. About letting them understand at Carnegie we have about what we call 30 human relations principles that if you apply, you can never go wrong. Top 9, number 1, you've got to start criticizing people, complaining and condemning them, and start to build people up. When you come to work in the morning, as simple as even smiling. I know a company where the manager sits in the corner office, he breezes past his people without saying as much as hi to anybody. And so the next time you want to talk to anybody, all you say is, Amadi, where is that work I gave you yesterday? You haven't even cared to know if my wife is still alive today. All you want to care about is my work. And I said earlier that people are beginning to ask, treat me as someone who is valuable. Forget about the skills I bring. Once I am treated as valuable, trust me, I will put the skills on the table. And that's the truth about it. And the interesting thing, I've said it before, with the risk of overflowing the issue here, is that you and I are managers. So while we're looking up to somebody else for employee engagement, it's you and I who will drive it. And for the benefit of those of us who are not HR leaders, HR focus that obligation to take this message back home. That me, immediate supervisor, right now in one of the top 3 circles, they realize this, and we're engaging them right now. They realize that everybody who has at least 5 people who report to them must go through a manager reorientation, because they have realized that the manager holds the key to employee engagement. It's not the CEO. This is the man who holds the key. It's the CEO that people see. It's the organization that they're working for. And then for the smaller organization, you don't want to micromanage people like you have said. People want to be seen as winning president. They need to be seen like they have the control over the affairs of the company. They want the control over their time. You don't want to manage them. They must not necessarily sit in the office 9 to 5. If they wanted to do that, they will go to the bigger firms. You've got to be more flexible than we are playing right now. Okay, let me summarize by the further slides, just talking about those 4 factors, the meaning of what they are all about. As I conclude this morning, a few things I have said we must take away. Talent management has moved beyond just sitting down and involving a very elaborate talent development program inside of the organization, because you can't plan too much into the future that you don't have the control over. Number 2 thing that I have said is, while we may continue to develop a smaller pool of talent and buy the balance that we need from outside, that pool, small pool that we are maintaining inside, we can't afford any more like we did in the past to put them through one narrow specific track. We've got to begin to give people a broader range of competencies, such that if they are required to move beyond their immediate function, they can thrive well and perform in other divisions of the company. Number 4 thing I said again was that we need to begin to make our internal job market really evolve like they have done in some Fortune 500 corporations, such that rather than lose somebody to take better opportunities outside, we can provide those opportunities in-house. What do I mean by that? If you have someone working in a particular division and there's an opportunity that is more interesting to him, I would encourage you to take home this message to your organization that we need to evolve that market, that people are allowed. I know managers don't let this happen. When I have people who are talented working with me, I don't let them to go to other divisions. But the question you ask yourself is, are we better off as an organization having them leave us as a me, the manager, remain in the system, or leaving the organization as a whole? And like Kunle said, we've got to look beyond ourselves and look at the organization, the system, what works better. And finally, we have said that as HR practitioners, you've got to go back home, do that survey if you haven't done on employee engagement, know how many percentage you have in the system that are engaged. I can tell you that if you're lucky to get up to 29, because this is an average score. For some institutions, I know in Nigeria, if you have 10%, you'll be very lucky. The Gallup organization did a survey in Africa generally, and they found out, this was February this year, the results came out that only 1 out of every 8 Nigerians are engaged at work. So you will be lucky if in your company you have 10% that are fully engaged. If you find out 10%, your challenge is, what can we begin to do not to lose them to competitors? Number 2, for the greater number that are disengaged, that are partially engaged, what policies, initiatives can we begin to involve to move them to that bottom, the top engaged people? And lastly, for those that are disengaged, mark my word, I'm saying you're better off letting them go than having them stay. And as we conclude once again, begin to ask this question as we go back. Do we want to continue to treat employees as people with valuable skills or valuable people with skills? Whichever approach you take,
we give you the performance you need.